heart, bright lights, the sun, the fire. Your heart beats fast, despite the truth that love is blind. I just wanna feel anything.
Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast with your host, Matthew M.
Hello and welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast, where we are clean and serene with a filthy mind in between. I am your host, Matthew M., and I am an addict in recovery. Welcome, everybody, to episode 21. Absolutely crazy. The numbers keep getting higher. It's nuts to me. It's absolutely nuts to me. I'm so grateful to everybody for all of the support, for all of the downloads, for all of the shares. Thank you all so very much, and welcome to another episode. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. Hopefully you had a beautiful 4th of July celebration if you're here in America. If you're not, it was probably just a regular old Monday or Sunday to y'all outside of the United States of America. But if you are celebrating the 4th of July, hopefully it was safe. Hopefully you had a great time, and got a nice 3-day weekend. And for all of my international listeners and viewers, I apologize for bragging about a 3-day weekend that y'all probably didn't get. But regardless, hope everybody had a great week. I had an awesome week. Cannot wait to get into all the details in my favorite moment of the week. Moments, as always. Super awesome week. I'm excited. We're going to be going over Tradition 9 today. We're going to be talking about, as I said, my favorite moments of the week, as well as answering more listener and viewer submitted questions, and of course, giving them clean time shout outs. But before we go any further, I have to give a huge thank you to our episode sponsor, and that is Etc. by Emily. If you're looking for a job or you're needing event staffing or party staffing, check her information out down in the description below. They are always hiring. Like I said last week, it's a great place to work. I used to work there, so definitely check them out. Also, huge thank you to our music for our theme music, and that is the song Anything by Valentino Khan and Alice in Wonderland. Thank you so much, Mad Decent Records, for allowing us to use that. All the streaming and download information is below in the description, so go give that song some love. And also have to give a huge thank you to our VIP supporters. These are the people on Patreon who are helping this podcast grow by making donations, again, through Patreon. If you would like to be one of these amazing VIP supporters, you can always go to the website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. In the top right corner, you can click on the Patreon button. It'll take you over there. You can get all signed up. And then you will get one of these awesome Clean and Filthy podcast stickers to display wherever you like. Thank you all so much for your support and your contributions. It is literally how this podcast is able to continue growing and be able to build a better product. So if you want to be like one of these awesome people, now you know how to. But these awesome people are Alex B., Cindy, Stephanie, Shar, Clint, and Alex T. Thank you all. Again, the Patreon support is I'm so incredibly grateful for it. It helps us out so much. I really thank you all for your support. And again, if you are interested in helping support this podcast, Patreon is the way to do it. So I got to make a quick announcement that we are still having some website issues. So if you normally are listening to these episodes on the Clean and Filthy podcast website, we're having a little bit of hosting issues right now. So technically the last 3 episodes or 4 episodes have not been uploaded as of yet, but do not worry. You can still download our podcast from any and all places, wherever you consume your podcast from, or you can always watch them on YouTube. So I just wanted to give a quick update about that. And hopefully we're going to have that taken care of this week. It's been an additional stress, and I was out of town, so I was not able to take care of it. But I just want to let everybody know. You can still go to the website, though, and check us out on all social media. Like I said, all of our social media options are up on the top. We highly recommend that you check us out on all social media platforms so you can stay 100% up to date, current with everything going on regarding the Clean and Filthy podcast. Again, website is www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. Check us out there and make sure that you are, liked, subscribed, commented, tweet, shared, retweet, TikToked, whatever it is to do for social media to help us out. I thank you so much for the help. Have to do a little caveat here and let everybody know that my voice is still, it's recuperating, as we'll get to in my favorite moment of the week. There was a lot of yelling, and I got a little bit of that 900 operator going again. So if you hear me and my voice getting a little bit deep and gravelly, again, I'm sorry, or you're welcome. So if you see me nursing my tea, that is why. So first off, before we get into our first segment, I got to say what's up to anybody who's in the YouTube live chat right now. For anybody who doesn't know, we broadcast live every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. Arizona time, live on youtube.com. We got a great group of people, depending on the week, just going back and forth, live streaming, live chatting with the live stream. It's a lot of fun for me to go back and listen to afterwards. So if you're in the YouTube live stream right now, what up, y'all? Let's get that chat going. Let's have some fun. And if you are there and you want to help support this podcast, please make sure to download this episode wherever you consume your podcast from. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, all the major podcast hosting directories. So please make sure to do that. If you aren't watching live on YouTube right now, and in fact are one of the people who has downloaded this podcast, and you want to partake in the live stream, make sure to head over to our YouTube page. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you will get a notification whenever we go live. As I said, coincidentally, it's every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. So, and, if you like what you're seeing on YouTube, make sure to throw us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. Leave us a comment or something. And if you don't like what you're seeing, I still always want to hear that information as well. Like I've always said, I want to make sure to get this podcast as broad of an audience and help as many people as possible, because that, at the end of the day, is why I'm here, is to carry the message of recovery and try to help. So before we get into that first segment, we got to talk about what we do, who we are, what we don't do. And again, my name is Matthew M. I am an addict in recovery. Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast. We are a 12-step fellowship recovery-based podcast. We talk about steps, traditions. We talk about the disease of addiction, and what us addicts that are in recovery go through on a daily basis. So that is what we do. But I want to make sure to always stay in line with the tradition. So I will not personally be identifying with any specific fellowship, nor will I be speaking directly about a specific fellowship or giving an endorsement for a fellowship or a treatment center or a recovery residence or a sober living or any of those things, because that's just not in line with the traditions, and I really want to make sure that I follow those traditions. But if you have any specific questions about those things, about how to find a sponsor in a specific fellowship or how to get into a treatment or whatever, please reach out to me. Please reach out to me at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com with any and all questions. I am more than happy to answer whatever I possibly can, but certain topics we just will not be directly addressing on air. But please never hesitate to send information over via email or through social media. Any of those are perfectly fine, and I would love to be able to help however I can. So if you are an addict who's in recovery, welcome. You're exactly where you need to be. If you're an addict who's not in recovery, or you have questions about the disease of addiction or addiction recovery, or maybe you think that you just maybe take too many drugs, welcome. We are a safe place for all walks of life, for all different parts of this journey. And if you are not directly involved with the disease of addiction, that's fine too. Because as I always say, the beautiful thing about recovery is that it doesn't matter about the drugs. The drugs maybe are why I got into recovery, was to stop using drugs, but I stay in recovery to become a better human being, to grow, to become a better father, a better son, a better friend, to experience life. And those are all things that can help people well beyond just stopping using drugs. So if you're hanging out with us right now, welcome. Hang around. Maybe you'll hear something you like. And if you do, please make sure to share it and like us. And, that is literally how we grow. We are an independent podcast, and we need all the help we can get from our wonderful listeners and viewers out there. So shout out to all of you. I love you all. Thank you. Now we're going to talk about what we don't do. So this is not to replace going to a meeting or calling your sponsor or having a home group or doing step work or being of service. This podcast is simply an opportunity to shine the beacon of light that is recovery around the world, to help people who might have questions about recovery, about the disease of addiction, about the things that us addicts go through. That is what we are here to do. We are here to develop a community to help people. So if you're part of that community, what up, y'all? If you want to be a part of that community, what up, y'all? And let's get going. Like I said, we got a really fun episode for us today. And let's get into the first segment, y'all. Let's get into that first segment.
Let's head to the lab for some R&D. Recovery and development.
We are back in the lab. That's right, y'all. This is the part of the show where we discuss a step, tradition, concept, or spiritual principle from the 12-step recovery model. And we discuss how us addicts implement them into our recovery, into our lives. We discuss the ins and outs, the character, the spiritual principles of them, and just give more information about it. I know for myself personally, when I first got into recovery, the concepts of steps and traditions and all these things was very overwhelming. So the point of this segment is to be able to answer some of those questions, to help get a little bit better understanding of the literature and of the steps or traditions or concepts that we implement in our life. So as we've been doing, we're creeping through each episode. We are officially on tradition number 9, episode 21, y'all. I will definitely say this tradition really has built off of the last few traditions. So if you have not listened to the previous episodes of the Clean and Filthy podcast, I highly recommend doing that, since there are things within this tradition that directly built off of tradition 8, which directly built off of 7 and 6 and so on and so forth. So hopefully everybody's caught up. If not, maybe throw a pause right now, go download all other 20 episodes of the Clean and Filthy podcast. Somewhat shameless plug, but I'm really just doing it to try to help y'all. I'm just trying to be like, help me. That's what y'all are saying. I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to get my download numbers up. That's not what I'm doing at all. Okay, maybe that wasn't the most honest or spiritual statement, but regardless, I'm trying to help y'all. So this is where we go next level within recovery stuff. As I've said before, the steps, 12 steps, are very much entry level, just getting that understanding about the things that we did or occurred during our active addiction. Traditions, though, they go deep. They on a new level. We go into way deeper levels of recovery within the traditions. It's confusing at times, even to somebody, who has a little bit of time put together, who's pretty active within service, who has a decent understanding of traditions. It still gets confusing. So that's why we go over them. So also have to point out, because I don't want to identify with any specific fellowship, I will be using a censor beep to replace the name of that fellowship. So if you hear that censor beep, everything is okay. It's supposed to be there. So let's get into tradition number 9, y'all. First off, what does tradition number 9 say? It says, as such, ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. I'm going to say right off the top that this tradition is kind of like the last one, like in tradition 8, where it almost feels like, in my opinion, there were two kind of separate topics that they just kind of mushed together. Like, well, we can only have 12 traditions, so let's just go and push these two together. That's my perspective on it. It's funny, I was talking with my therapist about this earlier, and she 1,000% saw it different than I did. So personally, that's how this addict sees it. But it says in the literature, it says at the basic level, we are a fellowship of recovering addicts who help one another to stay clean, nothing more. And we're gonna get into what organized means, and we're gonna break this down because there's some confusion within it. But we always got to look at the spiritual principles first. So these are the spiritual principles that this addict personally feels really vibe with this tradition, and they are simplicity, anonymity, humility, communication, responsibility, trust, and autonomy. And we're going to talk about some of these as we get a little bit further down. But before we even get anywhere more in depth here, we got to discuss what the definition of organized means within this tradition. Because when I first hear that, I'm thinking, isn't being organized good? Like, don't we want to be organized? Don't we want to have organized meetings and organized groups? And isn't that a good thing? Well, what it specifically says is that groups are organized, but the fellowship as a whole is not. So that the message that is being shared, the primary purpose, as we've discussed, the primary purpose is to carry that message to the addict who's still sick and suffering. There are no parameters on it. It's not an organized message. There's if something has an overall, perspective of what the message has to be, that could become a dictatorship. If I'm being told what my message is and how I have to carry that message, that is a dictatorship. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to have this level of being organized from that. So while the groups themselves are organized, and it's very important that they are, the fellowship as a whole is not. The concept of organization within this tradition is not the same as being organized. Because all meetings, all groups are organized. They have specific times they meet. They have specific service, representatives. They have different service positions. So to say that they're not organized is not what they mean within this tradition. So I want to make sure that is clear before we go any further within it, that we're not saying that they shouldn't have levels of organization within the groups, but from a fellowship perspective, that isn't what's wanted. The fellowship as a whole is not organized. So it says in the literature, it says, in this tradition, organized means having management and control. So we immediately start tying in with tradition 2, with tradition 3, with tradition 4, and with tradition 8. Because as we talked about earlier, the ultimate authority is a loving higher power. It's not members. Members aren't governors or dictators, or they're simply service representatives. That's it. So we have to make, when we get that element, it really is hammering home that the ultimate authority is a higher power. We also have to look at that the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. There's nothing else, as we've talked about. There's no resumes or DNA samples or any kind of application to become a member of the fellowship. There's only one requirement. And that's how it should be. Because there's no government or management or control. Having one requirement is all that's necessary. And within tradition 4, the groups have autonomy. Groups have autonomy to deliver and carry that message to the best of their ability. And then finally, we talked about there are no professionals. There are no professionals. We are forever non-professional, as we talked about last week in tradition 8. But it says in the literature, it says, we are a fellowship, not a lobbying organization or a medical service or a chain of treatment centers. We are just a fellowship of one addict helping another. That's why we don't have fees or dues, no pledges to sign, nothing. We don't care what your age, race, sexual identity, any of those things are. The only thing that's required is that you want to stop using. And it says in the literature, and this was helpful when I read this, it says, we understand that ought never be organized doesn't mean that we do not, or that we do what we do without any planning or predictability, because structure is necessary, right? I mean, how are we going to be a fellowship, a worldwide fellowship without structure? How are we going to carry the message without structure? They say a meeting occurs anytime two addicts share the message of recovery, but if there's no scheduled times because it's not organized and there's no structure, how's that really going to occur? So that line really made more sense within my brain. You know, that we need to have structure and planning and administrative things for the fellowship to function. But structure does not mean governance. Structure does not equal control or management. It says in the literature, we do not organize what people say. We do not choose who will reach out to whom. We do not assign sponsors or mandate step work or insist that the 12 steps must be worked in a certain way. And that speaks to autonomy. That speaks to the fact that an addict, any addict, can carry that message however it is that they see fit to do it, however a group sees fit to do it. So we never, the fellowship as a whole, never wants to put constraints or confines or manage how a person shares. What they feel is the way that they carry the message. So this is where this tradition really takes hold. The wording is a little bit weird because when you see organized, okay, but things are organized. No, the fellowship as a whole is not. And this could be interesting for some people depending on the type of personality that they have, you know, because there's this element of chaos versus control. Some people would prefer that the fellowship be managed downwardly. There's the president up here, goes down to the members here. But that's not how recovery works. That's not the way that the fellowship works. And that's a positive thing. Really, that's a positive thing that we're able to not have to worry about control, to not have to worry about some dictator coming in with a that's amazing at speaking, and next thing you know, the fellowship is completely gone to shit. We don't have to worry about that. Tradition 9 tells us that. We don't have to worry about that at all. So I want to talk about the element of autonomy for a second, because as we've talked about so many times, our primary purpose is to carry that message. And to fulfill that primary purpose, autonomy allows us to do that in however the way we see fit. It says in the literature, it says, each of us shares our experience, strength, and hope in our own way. And the result is something bigger than any of us could manage or organize. It's the spirit of one addict helping another.
That part.
That is the core of recovery. That is the core of recovery. And by not being managed or organized, our primary purpose is able to be more clear. The only authority within recovery is our higher power, not a king, not a queen, not a dictator, not a governor, not a president, none of those things. Because all of those add management, add control. And when that occurs, the primary purpose can be easily diverted. So the second part of the tradition says service boards or committees. So those come up, and I want to get into them a little bit more, but groups as a whole will often turn over larger needs to those service boards or committees. And this is, again, so that the primary purpose isn't diverted, so that carrying the message is the focus. This is why if you go to a home group and they have a business meeting, the business meeting does not occur during the standard meeting. Because the business of a home group is not carrying the message. It's not the primary purpose. It's necessary to help the fellowship continue growing, but it is not the primary purpose. So we have to really look at that and understand that if we were to try to bring in business elements or anything like that, we would be organizing the fellowship as a whole, and we can't do that. That's what we cannot do. Like another thing would be like if a home group were to be putting on a barbecue or something, and instead of setting up a subcommittee to discuss that outside of group time, at the home group they just simply sat around discussing all the details of the event. That's not carrying the message. Sure, it's being of service to this event, which helps carry the message, but it's not carrying the message. And that is our primary purpose. That part. Simple as that. So just like as we talked about last tradition, episode 20, make sure to go download episode 20 of the Clean and Filthy podcast. We are non-professional. The fellowship is non-professional, but depending on situations, may employ professionals or special workers, right? We talked about that last week. Everybody nod your head. All right, Groot's nodding his head. So we're going to say we're all on the same page here. So just like the fellowship as a whole is not organized, it may create service boards or committees. All right, so what are service boards and committees, and what does it mean that they're directly responsible to those they serve? Service boards or committees are specifically set up for a specific task, That was not the greatest sentence that I've ever sentenced, but I digress. But they will be set up for a specific purpose, to have a task to accomplish. And some tasks are very simple, and some continue for as long as the fellowship's around. But they will vary with different, with different levels of need. Always, and I'm going to say this multiple times throughout this, but service boards and subcommittees are always developed to handle a specific need, not for anything else. It is for a specific need within the fellowship or within that group. So some of the different service boards or committees that are set up is the area service body, or the regional, service committee, or public relations, or H&I, or convention committees. These are all different needs that the fellowship has. And these individual subcommittees are responsible to the fellowship by handling these things. And these are structured. These are structured with chairs and vice chairs and secretaries and responsibilities. But regardless of the position, regardless of the name of the subcommittee, it's always about serving the primary purpose. And like I said, they're all based on the needs of the fellowship, not about personal agenda or ego or feeling better than. It's always about the needs of the fellowship and how the fellowship can better carry the message. And like I said before, a service committee or a subcommittee or a service body is not directly carrying the message. They are a conduit to help make carrying the message easier. And that is why there are convention committees. That's why there's a public relations subcommittee. That's why there's a hospitals and institutions subcommittee. Those are all different subcommittees that can help carry the message, but they aren't directly carrying the message. I just want to make sure that there's a distinction there, because it is two separate things. So as I said before, sometimes, subcommittees set up with a specific task in hand. And that's always based on the communication of the needs of the fellowship. There was a subcommittee that I was tasked with being the chair of, essentially, about looking at doing our service options on the Zoom platform, doing it virtually. And we met, we had a group of people, we had a structure, and after we got the information we needed, that subcommittee disbanded because the need was met. Same thing with conventions. Each year there's a new convention. Each convention has a new subcommittee. Once that convention's complete, that subcommittee for that convention is complete. But then there are others like public relations or like H&I or like outreach, like the phone line, that these are all subcommittees that do not have an end in sight. The reason that they continue operating is because they continue to fulfill a need within the fellowship. Oh, they continue to act as a conduit for addicts to better carry the message to each other, to the public, to whatever it is. So I just want to make sure that is kind of understood as well. It says in the literature, it says, all the service we do involves accountability to and for the fellowship. And accountability doesn't just keep us honest. It keeps us connected to the group conscience and our higher power.
That part.
It's facts. And while service boards and subcommittees may help carrying the message is actually carried in our groups and by our members.
That part.
I know I've said that multiple times now, but it's very important. And I can say that personally because as we'll get into my personal experience with service, sometimes being a service feels as important as carrying the message at a meeting, and that is not the case. Even though we talked about last week that service can help keep you clean, it's not the actual message. It's not the primary purpose. It is a conduit to be able to carry that primary purpose. But one of the greatest things about being of service on a subcommittee or a service body is the element of responsibility. Because for so many of us addicts, we didn't really have a concept of responsibility. And now we're being asked to be responsible for decisions within a fellowship and sometimes handling budgets. And it's crazy at times when I look at one of the subcommittees that I'm taking part in that has a budget. And I'm like, 3.5 years ago, I didn't have a budget for anything. And now I got a budget to put on events? What? It's crazy. But within that responsibility, we are always being of service directly to the fellowship. Period. Those are the others that, of service directly to them. 100% directly to them. And there's a lot of stress that could be involved of not wanting to let down the fellowship, not wanting to have people think I didn't do a good job. And we're going to talk about this in ego a little bit further. But I want to quote the literature. It says that whatever our service efforts, we are guided by our sense of responsibility to the addict who still suffers. That is the goal. It's not about making myself feel good or doing something to have other people think I did a good job. It's about being guided by that responsibility to that addict who still suffers. One addict helping another. The therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. Period.
That part.
And that's something that oftentimes really needs to be reinforced within service work. And for me personally, my personal service experience, there's a quote that I think is amazing. It says, we balance between asking for help and ensuring that the work is done according to plan. We balance between maintaining our responsibility and allowing service boards and committees to carry out tasks assigned to them. And this is often a struggle for me. I've always been the type of person that was like, if I need something done, I'm going to do it myself. But that's not fair to the fellowship. That's not mine to take on. I'm just a member being of service. I'm not the member. I'm not the only member. I'm just one of many members. So often I'll feel invested in some idea, or if we're sitting in a business meeting and especially early on in recovery, I would make a motion for a new idea and it would get voted down, and I'd get in my resentment box and I'd be like, man, fuck these guys. They don't know what's good for them. I have the best ideas. I've got all of 6 months clean, but I know everything. But I got to remember, who am I serving? Who am I serving? That's when I can remove that ego element, when I could take the self-centered obsession out of it and remember who it is that I'm serving. What is my job? What is my goal? To carry the message to the addict who's still suffering. And we must keep balance as well, to not become managed. Because if I'm believing that I can do everything and I don't entrust other people on a subcommittee, then that starts to get kind of dictatorish. Dictatorish. Is that even a word? Dictatorish. Dictatorshipish. Whatever. Then it starts getting authoritarian. It's no longer a group. It now becomes one person's perspective more than others. And it says in the literature, and I love this so much, and this is so true within my personal recovery, especially within my journey through service. It says, allowing others to have input can improve our work many times over. It takes patience and open-mindedness to be able to listen to feedback, but the process is almost always worth the time. And this is so true. This is so true because so often we will get a different perspective than we have ever seen. I've said it so many times before. Coming into recovery, I've discovered so many things I didn't know. And that ties in directly with perspective very often. I didn't know that I didn't know about this perspective. But now listening and being open-minded and willing to hear this other person's perspective, maybe a person that I love but I don't like, because we never know when our perspective is going to blossom from something that somebody said. And we don't ever know who that person's going to be. It might be the person we least expect. Again, why staying open-minded and being willing is so important. And being able to see it from that different perspective might change my entire outlook. I don't know. And this tradition is so important to remind myself at times that it's not my subcommittee. I'm simply a trusted servant on that subcommittee. I don't run shit. I don't have control. I'm not Thanos dictator with the infinity gauntlet. This is mine. No. I am a trusted servant that is helping the fellowship be able to carry the message more effectively. It says in the literature that tradition 9 helps us to retain our autonomy even as we help accomplish great things, because it reminds us that we are always servants. Again, I'm not the shit. Even if what I am part of is amazing, I'm not the shit. I am doing the will of my higher power. Period. Not me. Sometimes I forget that. Sometimes when something goes really well, that little ego comes up a little bit. But we have to do everything we can, especially for an addict like me, to minimize that ego. Because that ego, once it gets going, it gets going. And I never want to be operating in that character defect. I want to try to be operating in the spirituality aspect of it. And remember that I am simply a servant. I'm not a chair of this subcommittee. I am a trusted servant. And it says in the literature, when we act alone, when we make decisions alone. When we act alone, we make decisions alone. And it's hard not to feel ego investment in those decisions. But when we join together, as I always say, what I can't do alone, we can do together. And when we're combining a group effort, that element of ego will go away. Because it's not my idea, it's the group conscience idea. And that can be a struggle between wanting to put on amazing events or wanting to feel personally like I did a good job. Am I wanting this to be successful for the sake of being able to help carry the message better? Or am I wanting this to be successful so that the people with 15 to 20 years clean look at me and be like, oh, Matthew did a good job? And if I have to ask that question, then I'm probably looking for the spiritually bankrupt version. I'm probably not operating in my higher power's will. I'm probably not doing it to simply be genuine. So that's something that an addict like me has to look at. And it says in the literature, it says that it reminds us to keep service separate from our egos and frees us from any illusion that service experience or outcomes somehow affect our value as members. That's all ego shit right there. Whatever I do within service does not change the type of member I am. All I am is the same thing as any other member. period. We talked about this before. You don't have to be of service to be a member. You don't have to be a X amount of years clean to be a member. No. All that matters is that each one of us is the same. We're all members just wanting one more day free from the disease of addiction. That's it. One more day. So this whole thought process in my brain of somehow I'm tying up my ego with being of service, it says right there in the literature, does not matter. It doesn't change my value as a member. Because you can have somebody who does the most amazing service work for every single year of their recovery and doesn't actually contribute. Maybe they just do service work, but that doesn't mean they're a better member. That some addict coming into the fellowship might not vibe with that member. Maybe they're going to vibe with the member who's never done any service, who's completely the exact opposite, which is, again, why we always have to emphasize the fact that no addict is better than any other one. Doesn't matter what service you do or what your professional life is or what race, gender, none of that matters. And this tradition really can emphasize that. I kind of just went off on a tangent there. I apologize. But there's two quotes that I wanted to mention here. And one of them really ties in with the element of a service committee. And it says, "We find peace of mind when we are able to trust others to carry out responsibilities without constantly looking over their shoulders, and they show us the same courtesy." And that is difficult for me. As I said, prior to getting in recovery, I always believed I could do whatever I set my mind to. Somebody, says you should do this, okay, then I'm gonna do that. I don't know how to do it, I'll figure it out. Me saying, "Help me," wasn't a thing. Wasn't a thing. I would do it. I'll find a way to do it. Point blank, period. It's on me. But in recovery, I don't have to live that way anymore, even though sometimes I choose to. Sometimes I choose to. And that's not my burden to bear. That's not on me to do something. And when I do, am I doing it out of love or am I doing it out of ego? At my home group, I was a position of service for much longer than my original service commitment was, because nobody else had wanted to step up for the service position. So does that mean that I was doing it out of the goodness for the fellowship, for my home group, or does that mean that I was doing it from an ego perspective? Depending on the day, I could have argued both sides of it. I tend to err on the side of I was doing it for the spiritual aspect of it. But I can tell you there were days that I was like, yeah, I'm going because nobody else will do it. Almost out of like resentment. Like, I'm going to do it because I'm a better addict. Fuck out of here. That's not truthful. I'm no better of an addict than anybody else. Regardless of what service work I do, regardless of how many sponsees I have, regardless of what number of steps or traditions I've worked with, none of that. I'm not a better addict. I'm just an addict. Period. That's it. So I want to close with this quote. Again, it's kind of a long quote. I always seem to close off with the long ones. I think it ties up the segment quite well. So it says, "In our efforts to practice this tradition, each of us can learn to communicate more effectively and to practice principles including honesty, patience, and accountability. Tradition 9 helps us to keep our primary purpose constantly in mind as we serve." That is the most important thing. That is the most important thing. So I know this tradition was a little wonky donkey, but hopefully that helped at least somebody get a little bit better understanding. And the whole organized element, hopefully it makes more sense now that, in fact, the fellowship as a whole is not organized. But groups, areas, subcommittees, all of those are. Hopefully that'll make a little bit more sense. And if it didn't, well, hit me up individually and we will discuss it a little bit more in depth. So that's what we got for this week of Recovery and Development. We are officially taking off our lab coats and we're about to head into our next segment. Come back next week where we will be talking about tradition number 10. Crazy, we are almost done with all of the steps and all of the traditions. Pretty incredible, if you ask me. So that's what we got. Now it's time to get into our next segment of the week. entitled My Favorite Moment of the Week. And we are still not sponsored by Bang Energy, but we will do a free ad read for them. The Clean and Filthy podcast is a major proponent of Bang Energy. Wonderful 300 milligrams of caffeine, super creatine, ultra CoQ10, and EAA aminos. So it helps this addict stay clean and filthy. Drink Bang. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. I'm just going to keep setting my Bang tensions out into the world, and I'm just going to materialize it. So please hold while I take a swig of this delicious key lime Bang. All right, y'all. It's time to get into my favorite moment of the week. Woo! We got to get some tea as well because I feel my throat getting a little sultry. I don't want to have an explicit rating on this episode, which is bullshit because I say fuck so many times. I always have an explicit rating, so, you know. That part. All right. This is the part of the show where we discuss something that's happened over the last week that is my personal favorite moment of the week. It could be from news, sports, pop culture, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. We talk about it because that's what we do. This is my favorite moment of the week. But of course, I like too many things. There can never just be one moment of the week. We got multiple moments of the week. So we get into all of them here. If you have anything that you think I might think is funny, maybe just a meme. Send me all of the best shit off of the gram. Send me all the best shit off TikTok. I'm still not on TikTok. I will be on Pornhub before I'm on TikTok, but send them over. I like cheating the system because if I keep getting all of the good TikToks, I don't have to get on TikTok. So therefore, I don't have to, lie and get on TikTok. Ugh. I work a spiritual program. We're not getting on TikTok just for today. So, of course, you can send me all of these things on any of my social media platforms. We're listed on everything. And you can get to all of them by going to the website directly and making sure to send us a friend request. Trying to get my presence up on Twitter a lot more. What up, everybody who's coming from Twitter? There's a great podcast community on Twitter. So shout out to them. Really trying to develop that and get a little bit more footing within there to really help this podcast grow and help more people. So first off, within our favorite moments of the week, if you're watching live on YouTube, you already know we got the Suns hat, we got the Suns shirt, we got the color matching LeBrons on my shoe. This is the new lucky outfit because the Suns are in the finals. Yeah, that's right, y'all. The Phoenix Suns are in the finals for the first time in 28 years in the finals. Oh, my God. So game one of the finals is in 12 minutes. But I made the commitment that I will simply watch the game tape delayed rather than change this podcast because we are here to help people. And as much fun as that game's going to be, that is not the primary purpose of my life anymore. So, Suns are in the finals. Had an amazing game 6. Absolutely straight smashed the Clips. Clips didn't have anything going in the last game. Absolutely dominant win. Because even when the Clippers would make a little bit of a run, like in the third quarter, Suns answered right back. It was beautiful. Every single player on the Suns who was played in the game, except for Nader, scored. Jay Crowder had 19 points. Ayton had 16 points, 17 rebounds. Booker dropped at 22. And CP3, 41 points. 31 of them in the second half. 8 assists, 4 rebounds, 3 steals, and his mid-range game was on fleek. He was just unstoppable, literally. And you could just feel it as, like, the game progressed a little bit closer. You could just feel it. It was just about there. And then, boom, Suns in the finals. There were some amazing moments afterwards between Monty Williams and Chris Paul and just a bunch of the teammates all, mic'd up, hearing it. So beautiful. Suns. Love it. All right. We got to talk about the Eastern Conference, though, right? Because a lot has happened since our last episode between the Bucks and the Hawks. Game 4, Hawks looked amazing without Trey. And then Yanni Vowles' knee went the wrong direction. Knees ain't supposed to bend that way, my dude. Woo! That was horrendous. Game 5, neither team had their star. Trey isn't there. Giannis isn't there. And then, so who brings it up? Brook Lopez dropping 33 points. Game 6, Trey tried to play, but he really couldn't do much. Bucks win the series 4-2. And also, got to give a shout out to Marv Albert. Marv Albert has been a long-time basketball broadcaster my entire life. I always have known his voice, and he officially is retired now. The last game he worked was Game 6 of the Hawks-Bucks, and no more Marv Albert. I didn't get a chance to actually watch it, which we'll discuss a little bit further down in my favorite moment of the week. But shout out to Marv Albert. So what does that mean? We got a finals game tonight. Oh, NBA finals game tonight, 6 p.m. on ABC. Suns are currently -170, so they are a -170 favorite. The spread last I saw was 5.5 points. The whole narrative of, the Suns have gotten lucky to beat the teams with their stars out, Lakers with Anthony Davis, Nuggets with Murray, Clippers with Kawhi, playing now Game 1 against the Bucks without Giannis. I understand that, but injuries happen. And we're going to talk about this a little bit further down in a moment, so we aren't going to go too much into this. But regardless, if the Clippers had beaten the Suns because Chris Paul was out those first 2 games with the vid, I'm not going to say, well, nope, it's not a legit thing. Injuries are a fact of any professional sport. That doesn't lessen the team's run because of that. I mean, in my opinion. Is it unfortunate for the other team? Sure. Would it have been unfortunate if the Suns had lost? Sure. But that's a fact of professional sports. My predictions for the series. Without Yanni Vowels, the Suns will win in 5. If he plays, the Suns will win in 6. Also, Charles Barkley, after riding the Suns' dick all season, now picked the Bucks to win, which hopefully is a really good sign because some of his picks have been ass at 9, ass at 10, ass at 11, ass at 12 bad. So hopefully that is good news for the Suns. All right, done with playoff basketball for this episode, but you can bet your ass we're going to have more next week. Got to talk about TV for a second because 2 shows really came through amazingly. Both episode 4 of Loki and of Dave were amazing. Loki episode, probably the best of the season. Now it makes a lot more sense why they had to force that 3rd episode on us and rush it and feel forced and all that. I get it. I still didn't like it, but I get it. The whole timekeeper misdirection was fire. And they actually had an after credit scene, which was awesome. So shout out to Loki. Cannot wait for episode 5 tonight at midnight. Next, we got to talk about Dave because episode 4 with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was absolutely incredible. Not just the whole segment of clowning on the Paul brothers, which was fire. Not just the writing, which is fire, but Dave got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And for somebody who doesn't really know basketball or doesn't really care about sports, that's not a big deal. It's bigger that they got, that they got Bieber or the Kardashians or the Jenners or YG or, Charlemagne and Angela Yee, all that. All those people were fire. But they got Kareem. They got 7'3" of silk. Kareem. I don't know. It was ridiculous. It was such a good episode. Such a good episode. Got to talk about the weekly fitness update that we said we were going to be doing. But this week, my current weight is not being mentioned because I made a commitment to myself that I would not weigh myself after eating like an absolute trash panda on vacation, which is in fact what I was. And I had like 3 burgers, went to Filiberto's, and ate $75 worth of pizza at the New York hotel. So we aren't even going to talk about what my weight is. I only worked out 1 time last week, had a really good pull day, but the whole lifting schedule was totally thrown off from getting a massage on Wednesday and then my weekend trip, which we're going to get into now. Got to give a shout out to one of the very, very loyal listeners on this podcast. I actually got to meet my boy Yehuda this past weekend. One of the joys of the pandemic was meeting people via social media. A friend of a friend that now is one of my friends. and actually getting to meet him was crazy. Plus, he was one of the people that I put on to Dave, and he got all the way caught up so we could experience episode 3 together, and it was everything that I hoped it would be, and I'm pretty positive it was everything that he hoped it would be. Was it, Chuck? Was it everything you hoped it would be, Chuck? I think it was. And then we went to Vegas, y'all. Anybody who knows me knows how much I love Vegas. I got clean in Vegas. I previously lived in Vegas a couple times. Vegas is my spot. I love it so much. So just being back in the city, and I know that doesn't make sense to some people. They're like, it's a fucking bunch of concrete and asphalt. Why does that matter? I don't know, but there's just something about that city that I just feel inside me. Phrasing. Something about that city that I just, oh my God, I love it so much. Even though we were only there for like 32 hours, totally worth it. One of the coolest parts about being in Vegas was going to the new Allegiant Stadium. Allegiant Stadium is where the Raiders are playing, right across from the Strip. $1.9 billion to build. It's absolutely incredible. Looks like the damn Death Star. It's all black. The detailing is super sick. Capacity of like 72,000 people. The design, seriously, is everything. It's everything. Black glass everywhere. It's amazing. And surprisingly, it was easy to get to. They had shut down one of the overpass freeways and just opened it up, and it was surprisingly easy to get to. Even though we parked at Planet Hollywood, it was surprisingly easy. Last thing I got to mention, and this is just for me and anybody who used to follow my poker attempted career, I got to meet Phil Hellmuth. Totally randomly saw him walking in the Bellagio. I was like, hey, Phil, can I get a picture? Got a picture. It was awesome. Shout out to Phil Hellmuth. If you don't know who Phil Hellmuth is, he is the GOAT of the World Series of Poker in terms of bracelets won. He's won 15 WSOP bracelets, more than anybody else by a large margin, known as the Poker Brat. Kind of an asshole, kind of a dick, kind of is allowed to be because he's so damn good. So that was super cool. But my actual favorite moment of the week was going to the Millennium Trilogy show at Allegiant Stadium on Saturday night. For anybody who doesn't know who Millennium is, he's a major EDM artist, massively successful, loved by everybody, massive EDM artist. And this was officially the first concert ever in Allegiant Stadium, which is just cool, first off. Second off, it is the largest EDM show for a solo artist ever. And the fact that an EDM artist booked a fucking football stadium is nuts. Like what we talked about, it's 70,000 people capacity for one DJ, not for a festival. You know, like you go to EDC, there's 500 different artists on 15 different stages. Of course, hundreds of thousands of people show up. But this was for one dude and 2 opening acts. One dude doing 3 sets in one night. That is just, it's unheard of. And it was so massive. And the whole spectacle of it was so huge. And it was weird because I've never been to a rave in a stadium. I was like, what's the vibe going to be? Is it like you're going to a concert and everybody's chilling? Is it going to be like people, you know, wilding out with rave booty everywhere and pasties and glow sticks and glitter? Definitely much more of that than the first. I'll say that. Pretty much a standard rave. Crazy costumes, people rolling their balls off, the whole thing. He originally had wanted to do a tour that was a trilogy tour. So it would be all 3 of his albums, Ashes, Awake, and Ascend, all together, all across the country. Then COVID happened. That wasn't possible. So we decided, you know what, we're going to do a final send-off for this chapter of my career. We're going to do a final send-off for these 3 albums. I'm going to play them all at this massive fucking stadium in fucking Vegas, and we're going to go out like that. And it was so fire. There was a live stream that people were able to watch that you can actually go and check out. I believe it's still online. Just Google Millennium Trilogy live stream. I believe it's still up. There were like 18 cameras streaming in 4K. And it was so cool. He did each one of his albums. First album, Ashes, he DJ'd from the middle of the floor section. So obviously they took the field out, and there was just a big, it looked just like what you would have at EDC. And he DJ'd the whole set on like this movable setup. It was really cool. And it was fire. And then Awake, and he went hard. He kind of set us up with that first set. Of like, oh, okay, cool. This is going to be nice and melodic, And then the second set, we went hard. And then the third set, we went really hard. My neck is still done. My voice is still done. I'm still attempting to recover because it was so nuts. He brought out Said the Sky. He brought out Dabin. It was so cool. And it was cool also because he didn't just play his own music. He also played a lot of songs that he personally DJ'd during those album eras, if you will. And the light show was nuts. One of the greatest light shows I've ever seen. And the fireworks. They didn't even open up the roof. They were just shooting fireworks off willy-nilly inside of a damn stadium. And then they had these flamethrowers. And I don't know why. I've always been kind of a pyro. I like fire. And the flamethrowers were so damn hot. We felt them 20 rows up. It was nuts. Nuts, nuts, nuts. But the coolest thing within all of it was they gave everybody bracelets. And they're just little light up bracelets that were all synced together. And depending on the visuals that were being shown on the screen or the color lasers and lights, they would change color. And so when you looked out at the sea of people of, 50, 60,000 people, everybody was in sync and everybody was in unison. And it was one of the coolest things. It felt like such a feeling of belonging, like this whole group together for the same purpose of enjoying this music and feeling love and happiness. It was really weird. Shout out to old girl who was behind us that I traded a couple pieces of candy to get these bracelets because we missed them when we first got there somehow. And having that all lighting up together and all feeling a part of was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was legit like true EDC vibes. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. And the fact that it wasn't a festival, the fact that it was a single artist is so nuts. It's absolutely so nuts. And I'm going to admit, I've never been the biggest Millennium fan. I liked him. Liked a lot of his songs. But I wasn't like, oh my God, the new Millennium song came out. Oh my God. I will admit, I was more excited to simply be in Vegas and to be going to the show with my two friends than I was to actually see Millennium. And how wrong I was. It is so apparent how wrong I was. I have never, in all of my years of existence, cried as much in public as I did at this show. Never. Never, never, never. Sometimes an artist's live show can really make you a fan of their music, just like sometimes an artist's live show can really take away from their music. They do a really shitty job. And this was so that first one where now I am such a huge fan. And it wasn't just the music that made me cry. It wasn't just the fact of the spectacle of this. It wasn't just the fact that I was sitting inside of a 60,000 person stadium with all these other people. There were so many elements to it that made it feel so incredible. And I mean, never in my life have I cried as much, as many times. I cried a lot in Avengers Endgame, in multiple times. But I cried more the first damn set than I did in Endgame. And it was a really weird vibe where I could go from, thankfully, wearing a mask the whole time so nobody could really visually see my ugly cries. But it was a really weird vibe to go from ugly crying to now headbanging so hard that my legs are getting bruised on the seat behind me, to going back to crying, to back to headbanging. And I mean, the music was amazing, and the drops were amazing, and the whole thing was together. It was amazing, but the gravity of the situation and the entire event is what really got to me. When I was just looking up at the light show and looking up at the fire cannons and realizing that 3.5 years ago, I was completely hopeless. 3.5 years ago, my life had no meaning, had no purpose, had no joy, had nothing to it. And now, 3.5 years later, I'm having one of the best nights of my life with amazing people experiencing amazing things, making memories that I will remember. Unlike a lot of the people at that show who probably only going to be remembering if they watch the live stream again. You know, just seeing where my life has gone. A feeling of calm came over me and a feeling of contentment. And that came out of me in the form of tears. So it was an incredible thing. The amount of love and joy and just happiness I felt was incredible. And one thing I also love, I want to talk about for a second, is the whole Plur EDM community, because it's about as varied as going to a recovery convention. Age, race, sexual identity, color, creed, religion, lack of religion, none of those things matter. I mean, every single one of those elements was represented within 3 rows around us. We had older people, we had younger people, we had every race, we had gender, it was incredible. And I love that. And I love that because it was people from all across the country. I mean, one of our group was in town from North Carolina. We were there from Arizona. People from Texas, Washington, California. All that was just on our row alone. It was cool. I saw one of my friends from Arizona on the Jumbotron. And everybody within the community is all about watching out for each other. And there's this element of caring about your neighbor, of wanting to make sure that they're okay, that we desperately need in the fucking world. Why is it that we can have that at a EDM show and that's not what we do in the real world? Like, when you see somebody needs water, you give them water. You see somebody getting a little too sweaty, you fan them down. Somebody's having difficulty, hey, what's up, you all right? And that, to me, is one of the most beautiful things. And yes, a lot of drugs are consumed within those communities. So I'm not saying it's like the greatest thing from like a recovery standpoint, but from just a perspective of caring about your fellow, it's unlike any community that I've ever been in outside of recovery. There's nothing else that is like that. So it was absolutely incredible. One of the greatest nights of my life. If you're a fan of Millennium, go check out the live stream. Also, his new album, Fallen Embers, comes out 10 days from today. So that's what we have for my favorite moment of the week. It was an amazing, amazing, amazing trip. I couldn't ask for anything more from the trip in general. It was absolutely incredible. So that's what we got. Hopefully I'll get back to Vegas sometime soon because, God, I love that city so much. And I'm definitely going to go and rewatch the live stream probably tonight because I really need some more of it in my life. So that's what we got. If you have anything else that you would like me to check out during this next week, make sure to send it over to me on any social media. I'm always wanting to see the newest, funniest memes or the best talks of the tick. Please send them over. I always am curious. And, of course, you can send them to any of my social media accounts or send them directly at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. So that's what we got for my favorite moment of the week. We'll be back next week with more of my favorite moments. And now it is time for our next segment.
It's time to Ask an Addict with your host, Matthew M.
That's right. It is time for our third segment, entitled Ask an Addict. This is the part of the show where this addict, the resident addict of the Clean and Filthy podcast, answers questions that are submitted by our listeners and our viewers. They do not need to be recovery questions. They happily can be, but they don't need to be. So if you have any questions that you would like to have answered on air, send them over to me directly. This is like a Reddit AMA. Ask me anything. I like answering questions. So I will obviously be giving some experience, strength, and hope on my personal perspective on things, but this is a lot of my opinion, just so that is known. First question I got. This is funny. It says, what is my favorite flavor of Bang Energy? I just took a nice drink of Bang Energy there. Bang, sponsor me, please. So we got to talk about a couple things here. Bang has some horrible flavors. Birthday cake, Star Blast, cotton candy, which is weird because their cotton candy red line's actually pretty good. Crisp apple, oh my God. There's unicorn surprise or unicorn jizz or whatever the fuck that thing is called, and it is horrendous. And the Miami Cola, I respect what y'all did with the clever marketing, Coke, Miami Coke, Coca-Cola, Miami Cola. Okay, I see you, Bang. But it tasted like petrified booty juice. Disgusting. Just putting that out there. But there are some amazing flavors. And if you've been around Bang since the beginning, because we on this Bang OG shit right here, there were original flavors back before they changed, back when they just had BCAAs in them instead of EAAs, that, in my opinion, tasted better. The old Cherry Blade Lemonade, which I swear was originally called Cherry Blade Limeade. There's some like Mandela effect going on in that because apparently it's always been Cherry Blade Lemonade, but myself and a group of us all swore that it was Cherry Blade Limeade. I don't know, Mandela effect. Weird. But the absolute best flavors of Bang. Absolutely. Cherry Blade Lemonade, Key Lime, and the old flavor of Lemon Drop. Those are really the only three that I drink. In the mornings, I drink a Cherry Blade Lemonade. In the evenings, I drink a Key Lime. Yes, most days I drink 2 Bangs. Probably not the best for my overall sleeping schedule, but whatever. They're delicious. They're delicious. So that's my answer. Cherry Blade, Key Lime, absolute best. There are plenty of other flavors that are very tasty. Best thing you can do is try them all. Try all of the Bang flavors and see which one you like the most. And then tell Bang personally that you're trying them because of the Clean and Filthy podcast. Maybe that's how we're going to just put that Bang tension into the world. Yes, intention, but for Bang. All right, next question. It says, if the Suns win the finals without Giannis Antetokounmpo, will I still be satisfied? And the answer is yes. Yes, I will. Because I have lived in Phoenix my entire life. And we have made it to the finals once in my life, 1993. And that is still one of the most crushing moments, as we talked about on this podcast so many damn times. So yes, I will. As a fan of the team when it was the only team in Arizona before the Diamondbacks, before the Cardinals, to me, like, they are the original. The Suns will always be the original, which is why Phoenix just goes so crazy for the Suns. So yes, I will be satisfied. Would I almost prefer that Giannis does come back? Yes, I would. But I would be still very satisfied with the win. Because at the end of the day, even without Giannis, they still have Middleton, who can drop 35 on you. They still have Drew Holiday, who maybe isn't an all-star, but he's pretty damn close. They still have Brook Lopez dropping 33 points. So yes, I would be. Again, Suns in 5. If Giannis plays, Suns in 6. Let's go. Next question says, what are my thoughts on gambling in recovery? Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this is my experience, strength, and hope. This is my opinion on this. This is not going to be the opinion of my therapist, who has a large background of gambling addiction treatment. This is not going to be the perspective on other people who have different experiences. But for me personally, this is my experience, strength, and hope on the topic of gambling. There has to be, before we do anything at all that could be considered addictive, we have to look at the fact that we are talking about the disease of addiction. We are not talking about a specific substance or a specific action. We are talking about all of the things that are encompassed within the disease of addiction. All of the things that we could use to get out of ourselves, to get out of our feelings, to mask our feelings. So if gambling is something that is replacing that rush that we used to get from using drugs, then yes, that is a problem. The same way that me personally used sex in that same way, just like I would have used drugs, that is a problem. Same thing, it could work with food or shopping, spending money, porn, whatever it is. If we are using it to mask or hide or escape or block out or change our feeling, that's an issue. If we're getting that little rush that we get from using drugs, then that's an issue. And that is something that very possibly could lead to a full-on relapse. But that doesn't mean that some people aren't perfectly fine gambling. And when I'm saying gambling, I'm not talking about playing poker, because to me, playing poker is much more of a perspective of skill than it is on direct gambling. I have never felt that type of rush playing poker as I have from just gambling. There have been times I put a stupid amount of money on roulette to go black or red. I felt a rush, like, oh my God, is it going to hit? Is it going to hit? Is it going to hit? I never felt that rush. Even when I took third place at a World Series of Poker circuit event, I didn't feel that rush. It was more excitement from skill being done. I felt excited that I had played well. I didn't feel this like, oh my God, type of rush that I have, admittedly, from sometimes of compulsive gambling. Do I think I am a gambling addict? I don't. Do I think that there have been times in my life I compulsively gambled? Yes, I definitely have. I admit that. But never within the game of poker. So I think with this topic, it really is, it's something that has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, because I know a lot of addicts who, from the fellowship of my choice, that go to casinos all the time and have fun with it and don't have an issue. But I know other ones who know that they can't, because that feeling of when pushing that button on a slot machine and hitting that jackpot feels the same way as putting a substance in their body. If it feels the same way as putting a substance in their body, that is an issue. But that doesn't mean that, that is everybody's story. It really truly becomes a case-by-case basis. I personally have never told any of my sponsees or suggested to them that they shouldn't go gamble. If it's something that becomes an issue, then we'll approach that and we'll discuss that and we'll work some steps on it. But it can be a very detrimental thing, just like sex, just like porn, just like shopping, Amazon deliveries, just like food. All of those things, if we're doing them compulsively, if we're doing them to get outside of our feelings, to get outside of our emotions, I can tell you from experience that is a problem. As we will talk about in much greater in-depth detail, it is a problem. So, personally, within my recovery, I personally don't look at gambling as a major thing. I know it's something I would have to be, very cognizant of so that it doesn't become a major thing. But for me personally, in my recovery, just for today, where I'm at, I'm okay with it. I was just in Vegas and I didn't bet any money. I didn't feel the need to. It wasn't like, oh, I want to go hit the tables. If anything, if I want to gamble, quote unquote, it's going to be playing poker or maybe playing some blackjack. And we had other things that were more important. So it really does come down to a case-by-case basis of what, your sponsor feels is best within your recovery, what you feel you are able to do, and with guidance from your higher power. That's, in my opinion, again, my opinion, my experience, strength, and hope on this topic. That's what I have to say about that. So that's what we have for today's episode with Ask an Addict. Next week, we will be back answering more of your questions. So make sure to submit questions to Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com or on any podcast directory. So maybe your question will get answered on air. Please send them. I love answering questions. I don't know why I love answering questions so much, but I do. So we are almost out of time. But we can't close up without them clean time shout outs. Yeah. This is the part of the show where we give shout outs for people who have achieved universally recognized milestones within the 12-step recovery fellowship. And those are anybody with 0 to 29 days clean as a newcomer, anybody celebrating 30 days clean, 60 days clean, 90 days clean, 6 months clean, 9 months clean, 1 year clean, 18 months clean, or multiple years clean. But we also like to give shout outs for big numbers. So 500 days, 100 days, 1,000 days, 1,500 days, 2,000, 2,500, whatever. If you've got a milestone coming up between now and next Tuesday. Make sure to send it over. Again, Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, or just go to the website. Contact us through the website, through any of the social media, so we can give you a shout out on air. I love doing Clean Time. Got to get some extra bang. And let's go. We got a whole bunch of people today. I love doing Clean Time. It's the greatest way to close the show down. First up, first and foremost, as a newcomer, one of my sponsee brothers, we got Jersey coming back to the program. Good job, my brother. And then we've got Jack, also as a newcomer. Great job, brother. Glad you're here, man. And then with 90 days clean, we got my sponsee, Vince. Well done. And with 9 months clean, and I've seen all 9 of them, we've got Mike. Yeah, 3/4 of a boop. And then we've got oldies with 9 months clean as well. Well done. And then with 2 years clean, we've got Natalie. We give them bups for them years. And with 2 years clean, we've got Brittany. And with 4 years clean, we've got Blake D. And also with 4 years clean, from out in Vegas, we've got Devin H. Well done. And with 1,500 days, we got Kelly from Twitter. That's like a little more than 4. So we go, and then boop, like that. It's like 4 years and like 11 days or something. Regardless, 1,500. That's what's up. And then with 6 years clean, we got my boy Mike. Yeah. And we got to reload for this one, though. Because my sponsor, with 31 years clean, we've got Larry P. Woo! 31 years. Any addict, baby. Any addict. That's what we got for here. So shout out to everybody who picked up Clean Time today. I love Clean Time. Love it, love it, love it. If you picked up Clean Time today, congratulations. If you didn't pick up Clean Time today, don't use, and guess what? You will. It's literally how this works. Remember, every day clean is a successful day. That fucking part. Well, y'all, we are officially at the end of our show, of our time for the day. Huge thank you to each and every one of you for being out there, sharing, commenting, liking, subscribing, tweeting, retweeting, everything that you're doing to help support this podcast. I am eternally grateful, and it's so beautiful to see, and I thank you all so much. So a huge, again, thank you to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. Check out all her information below in the description. Huge thank you again to Valentino Khan, Alice in Wonderland, for this amazing song playing in your ears right now. Huge thank you to every single one of y'all for being here, supporting, helping. If nobody told you today that they love you, I love you. Each and every one of you, even if I don't know you, even if I never meet you, I love you and thank you for being a part of my life and a part of my recovery. See you guys next week, 5 p.m. YouTube. Download wherever you get your podcast, y'all. And go Suns.
I just wanna feel